Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Welcome to satsang. Happy Navaratri to everyone. This is the week of the celebration of the goddess, of the divine feminine. Here in India, we have 9 days, each day celebrating a different manifestation of the goddess energy. If you're interested in this, you can look at ramanamaharshi.org or any of the major temples here in Tiruvannamalai, and you can see the daily celebrations that go on during this week. Actually, it's 9 days, so it's quite joyful, so beautiful, so many flowers, so much devotion. So if you feel drawn to do that, you can look at that, check that out. This morning, I got a message from a devotee, a report. She was telling me something about how her practice has been going, the fruits of practice that she's been experiencing. Very lovely message to get. And toward the end of the message, she said something that sort of stuck with me throughout the day. Excuse me. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about it. And what she said was, that even though she's aware now of this deep silence in the background or as the foundation of her daily meditation practice and her life, she noticed that her mind is always busy when she goes to sit, when she goes to enter the silence. Her mind is always busy. And so her comment was something along the lines of, so I have just decided to accept that that's the way that it is. I don't want to struggle with this mind. I'm just going to accept that this mind in some way is not quiet. When I speak about the silence of being, I'm not at all talking about whether or not the mind is quiet. And some of you have probably also noticed that if you put out a demand in front of yourself for your meditation period, that your mind be quiet, you can spend the whole meditation period struggling with the demand that somehow your mind be quiet. And of course, if you do this very often, you realize quite quickly that you're not really meditating at all during that period of time. You're making a great effort to quiet the mind, but don't seem to be getting anywhere. The silence of being, which I speak about, is not affected by whether the personal mind is quiet or not. This silence is a primordial silence. It's the silence out of which the seed syllable, the root syllable, Om, comes. And rises into the world. It's also the silence which is represented by Lord Shiva in his meditative pose, quiet and firm, unmoving. The movement of Lord Shiva is the cosmic dance represented by Lord Nataraj, the cosmic dancer. Lord Shiva is also said to be Arunachala, the holy hill in Tiruvannamalai. His physical presence in the world, which is why this place is so honored among Vedantins and Hindus in general. The mountain is firm and represents stillness, the unmoving characteristic of that primordial silence. This is a pointer for our practice in the sense that the physical mountain is here in its unmoving grace. People walk on it, animals live on it. They go through their whole entire lives. The mountain is scuffed, the trees are born and die, the animals defecate. The mountain remains unmoving. So this is a pointer for us in our daily practice and in our lives to notice this stillness which is unmoving, no matter what takes place on the surface. We have an experience of this primordial silence every day, and it's not when we're meditating. It's when we settle down for deep sleep. Deep sleep is that time when all the senses, sight, sound, taste, touch, thinking, withdraw into themselves, into the heart center, and we rest. This is the deep silence of being. What we are doing when we attempt to sit in deep meditation is we are returning to this sense of deep sleep while we are awake in the waking state. We do so by withdrawing attention from the sights and sounds going on around us, from the sensations in the body, and eventually from the activity of the mind. But we don't do this in a forceful way, in a demanding way. We do this by way of deep relaxation while remaining alert. If we place a demand on a mind to keep quiet, our practice becomes about that demand. This is why Sri Ramana encourages us, rather than struggling with that mind, to point ourselves toward the source by asking the question, who is the seeker? Who is the thinker? To whom does this thought come? In doing so, we direct the energy of our attention, our devotion, and our love back toward the source. So it's important to remind ourselves that our practice is not at all about struggle, but struggle is a good indicator that we need to inquire. Struggle indicates nothing more than that you are caught in some sense of false belief, that you are some thought pattern, some habit in the mind, some sensation in the body, some experience you are having in relation to the world. The struggle comes as you try to escape those things. But the inquiry doesn't lead us into a direct confrontation with the body, mind, or the world. The inquiry encourages us to not care in some way about whether the mind is busy or not to put a prerequisite on our silence or on our sitting, that somehow the body and mind should agree with what we are doing and give us the space to do it. We simply withdraw from that whole struggle and ask, to whom does this thought come? And then we keep quiet. If you look, really look deeply, you see that there is no one to whom this thought or this thinking comes. It just rises in the space of awareness. This, in and of itself, is not the problem. This is the natural way of the body-mind. The difficulty comes when there is identification, the acceptance. This is how I am, so I can't do anything about this. This is identification with the activity of the body-mind and identifying with it as me, as mine. So the thoughts are mine, the sounds are mine, the tastes are mine, the body is mine. This is the source of that struggle and of our difficulty. The way of inquiry offers us a way out that doesn't involve confrontation with that which is unreal. It simply asks the question, what is real? It does this through the question, who am I? Or some form of that question, such as what is aware here? This is not a thinking process, however. The true inquiry simply acknowledges the fragility of the mind, understanding that it cannot solve the problem, and that the way out is neither to accept it as being evidence of there being a me, or reject it as being something I don't want. In both cases, one has grasped the me, the personality, the separateness of a false identity. When what really needs to happen if your goal is to understand the already liberated state of your own being, is to simply ask the question, who? Who am I referring to when I say, this mind will not be quiet? I just have to accept it the way it is. There's an implied me there, isn't there? And this me is what is always between you and liberation. So I encourage you to understand correctly that when we talk about the silence of being, we are not talking about whether your mind is quiet or not. We're not talking about any activity that you are engaged in your daily life. We're not talking about any of your relationships. What we're talking about is an ever-present freedom out of which this whole dream of body, mind, and world seems to be arising. Seems to be arising. The inquiry is about questioning whether or not what seems to be arising is real. And if the conclusion, having searched through all of your experience, is that it is not real, if that's the conclusion you come to, then it becomes quite natural to ask the question, then what is real? And open yourself up to that realization and recognition. Okay, I'm going to stretch out here for a moment and fix this camera because it's about to fall off the computer. So bear with me a second. Okay. So please, by all means, continue with your practice. Just don't believe any of it is real. Don't become trapped. In believing that the circumstances of your life, of your mind, of your emotions, of your body need to look like something or appear as something in order for the conditions to be right. Your realization, your recognition is here now. Relax. Stay alert. Know you are aware. No matter what circumstances you find yourself, your mind, or your body in. Know I am aware and stop there. Free yourself. One last pointer. To be aware is not to be aware of anything. begin to lose interest in the objects of your own mind and your own world. They will either still be there or they will not. Simply remember, notice with clarity, I am aware, and leave everything else to life itself. Try it. See what happens. This is not different from sitting as the supreme stillness of Lord Shiva 1 minute and dancing as Lord Nataraj the next. If you get out of the way, your life can flow in the way it was meant to. Get out of the way by standing in the recognition, I am aware. I am here now. Hari Om. All right. You are beautiful too, James.
Good morning, Rishi. This is Marie. Thank you.
Hello, Marie.
So just as I'm sitting here now and quiet, I'm reminded how you've said so many times in the past, like everything is an opportunity to look. Just what is it during meditation? Is it not during meditation? It's so easy, like it's so in our front, right in front of us to ask ourselves that question. It's right there.
Yeah.
So thank you for this guidance. Life gives us so many opportunities to inquire. It's amazing.
One of the metaphors I like and I use quite a lot, it relates to the fact that when we are here in the world, the way we are perceiving what's going on in the body, in the mind, and in the world is through the sense doors. So one of the things that I'm fond of saying is allow everything to be a bell of mindfulness. This is coming out of my Buddhist background. Some of you have that background as well. But what I mean by this pointer is what you're talking about. Every sight, every sound, every taste, every touch, every smell, every thought, every emotion, when we are open to them being a bell of mindfulness, it's not just the sweet sound of the gong. Then we also revel in the lawnmower that's running, the chainsaw that's running, the traffic we're sitting in, the taste of the food that we just cooked and it didn't turn out so well. Every single thing becomes that opportunity not to notice the object, but to become aware of what is noticing the object. In this case, anything can be used. A thought in the mind, a habit pattern in the mind, an old emotion that is still troubling us from 10, 15, 20 years ago. Everything that comes is not pointing toward that object. Everything that comes is the object pointing back toward the awareness itself. Without the awareness, the object is not there. You know this because you go into deep sleep every night. When the senses are shut and the mind is at rest, there is the deep sleep and deep peace of realized awareness. But because there's no light in the mind, we aren't actually aware that this is our nature. So this is a simple technique for using every opportunity that's there throughout our day. We don't need to change anything. We simply need to understand that the sound of the gong returns us to the awareness of our own being. The sound of a horn in traffic returns us to the sound of our own being, to the awareness of our own being. The taste on the tip of our tongue returns us back to the awareness which is there and makes that taste knowable to us. This is the way in which everything becomes an opportunity to awaken. This is why I say use everything. Not to support a personality or an identity, but to sweep them away. And of course, you know, Marie, the final result of this kind of practice is not that we enter nothingness. It's actually that we come to understand the everythingness of consciousness itself. We come to understand that everything is awareness, everything is consciousness, everything is God. Say it however you want to say it, whatever your background is. This is what we understand by going deeply back within, by returning over and over through all of our experience to the source. We come to realize that everything is source. Nothing is separate. And we lose our fear. We lose our doubt. All of these things that are related to the experiences of a personality are simply swept away. And those moments of silent mind begin to show themselves. It's only when we don't want to look through the objects or behind the objects or away from the objects that the objects, whether it's a busy mind or something else that's going on in our life, that object can only take center stage when we refuse to turn away from it and to use its energy as a way of returning to the heart of being. Plunging into the self moment by moment rather than into the objects of perception.
Hey, Rishi.
Hello, Holly.
Hi. One of the things that you just said is to use the energy of the objects to fall back into being. And that's kind of my learning edge right now because I have a higher than normal level of stress in my life right now. It's good stress. It's fun stuff. It's all good. But there is a process of like ego activation from being engaged in mental and emotional stuff in the world. And there are times that it's really clear to me that something stressful deepens a sense of presence and just, the minute you see through it. But in the everyday, like 100 times a day, when you have like a little bit of stress, that definitely seems to pull me away from a sense of depth and awareness. And I'm just wondering, I'm being very attentive to allowing whatever's happening to unfold through me and not have it activate my ego. It's not working. Like I'm failing all the time, but I think I'm mostly seeing when it fails.
Good.
And I guess I'm wondering if you have any just advice for how to engage in sort of a higher level of stress and still stay grounded in the sense of quiet.
So, in a way, I can say the remedy is always the same. The sense that there are higher and lower levels of stress. It really does come from a lifelong habit or practice, you could say, of becoming desensitized to lower levels of stress so they don't activate us. But as we become more and more accustomed, more and more desirous of realizing our nature as a sense of calm abiding, knowing this is who I am, life can up the ante. And so it appears that the stress levels go up in order to try to return us to this place of identifying more and more with the activity of the body mind, with the levels of stress. But the antidote is always the same. It's to notice 100 times a day, 500 times a day, 1,000 times a day. Not that the level of stress is going up, but that I am aware that there is activity going on. And in this activity of body, mind, or world, awareness is here. As the levels of stress appear to go up, it appears to be harder. But this is the moment at which we have to increase our recognition that awareness is here and is the foundation for all of this that's happening. Because when you talk about levels of stress going up, what you're really talking about is levels of identification going up. As the intensity of activity or the intensity of thoughts or the intensity of emotions goes up, then the intensity of reactivity in the mind body goes up. This is the intensity of identification. So this is when it becomes imperative, as much as possible. When you said, I'm failing constantly, I said, good, because the reason I said that is because each time you recognize that you are failing, you have just up-leveled your self-awareness another notch. If, this is an important if, you don't then take up the drama of I'm failing. To recognize that you have entered into a new level of stress or activity or whatever, and that you have failed to remain as the self-awareness which you are, this is a very positive thing if you notice it. So this is why I say, as the level of activity, the level of intensity goes up, the level of stress goes up, you have to increase the recognition that there is nothing going on here but awareness itself. You have to be willing to become really firm in that. And in how do you do that, though, is the question. The answer to that is by continually letting go of the belief that there is anything whatsoever happening, that there's any reality to it at all. This then can be the foundation of the question, well, then what is real? Now, when we talk about this in this way, we're sort of stretching it out over like it's like a 4-step, 5-step, 6-step process. And in the midst of the tension you're talking about, it feels impossible to know and experience and direct that 6-step process in the middle of all the apparent chaos that's happening. But understand that the mind has the capacity to do things, let's say, so quickly that you can barely see them. So that means that it's possible for us to both be engaged in activity, be engaged in thinking, be engaged in a certain level of stress, and at the same time aware that I am aware. Even if it's only just momentary. Remember that the Buddha said through his deep practice that there are 17 mind moments in every second of existence. What he meant by that was that the mind does not multitask. It simply can be aware of 17 movements in consciousness in every second. So there's plenty of space in there for you to just interject, I am aware, into everything you are doing. You see, it's not a matter of you need to interject, I am aware, and then you need to give yourself a break, and then you need to have a space, and then you need to fall into silence. And, no. Notice you are aware and go on. And then at the next moment, at the next opportunity, notice I am aware. In this 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 I am aware. So when the level of stress goes up, understand the level of identification has gone up. So up level the recognition that you are the awareness itself. Of course, all of this is a technique. Ultimately, you don't have to do all of this, but, it's just like I was saying earlier, if you're going to notice that your mind is not quiet, then you have to address that in some way, because otherwise you will identify with the mind which appears to be not quiet. And that will become a big problem for you. It becomes a big barrier to your recognition of the self and your recognition of silence. So this is the same thing. Don't let the activity of your mind, of your body, of your world, of the necessity of your life pull you away from the recognition that you are the awareness itself. You are not just the stress that you're seeing, you're that which is aware of the stress. And keep coming back to that. And I promise you that what happens over time is that because you are taking larger doses of the medicine, the sickness eventually passes. And what remains is the awareness which was there before the illness started, the illness of the mind. Is that helpful?
One more question. One of the stories that I tell myself when I'm experiencing this stress is what you have said. And you've said this to me before, that life ups the ante. So it appears that there is more stress and more responsibility. And I guess one of the mind structures that's sort of starting to break apart is a preference for being invisible and having no responsibility. And sometimes I can't tell if life is up in the ante and, I am being danced by the one life, or that it's just a story of now is the time for increased responsibility. And that's a mental story. I can't sometimes tell the difference.
Yeah, I wouldn't overthink that if I were you.
Okay.
You dance when you dance and you're still when you're still. Life has a way for all of us. If we are meant to be still all the time, we are still all the time. We cannot find things to do. Life is saying to us all the time, please sit still. I'm going to give you nothing to do, so sit still. But for another, the path is different. And like you said, it can be, you can have preference for it to be one way for a long time, and then it can change and you can suddenly find yourself on the other side of the duality. But understand that spiritual life and spiritual recognition is about understanding that it's neither about stillness nor about activity. There is no right way to do life. Life does itself. The error is that I think it's my life and I'm deciding all these things. Because there's a deep-seated misunderstanding there about what is the nature of I. Is the nature of I the job I do, the activity I undertake, the relationships I have, the state of my health, the state of my mind? Or is I something much vaster than that? This is the foundation of the question, who am I? And it's what the question, who am I, is pointing us toward. And it's never about what we think it is about. If we think what it is about is some perfect life that we're going to live, or something we should do, or shouldn't do, or have to do, or don't have to do. The life that you have is the life that you have. Pay attention. Remain aware. Not of the objects, but of the seer of the objects. Not at the rate at which the objects are passing in front of the seer, just the seer herself. And let everything else take care of itself. Dance or be still according to what is there. I promise you, if you take your attention away from the objects repeatedly, in small steps, in small moments, through the recognition, who am I, or noticing, I am aware. If you do this over and over and over, the life you are destined to live will be the one you are living in that moment. Will not be a configuration of your mind that you're chasing after or you're trying to avoid. It will be the life you are meant to have. Not as a personality, but as the self, as the recognition of self-awareness. And the last thing I want to say about this is about this whole question that comes up all the time around, should I be doing this or should I be doing that? Could I be doing this or could I be doing that? It's none of your business. Not if what your goal is to let life live you. You cannot get this wrong. The life you have is the life you have. It's the right life for you. It's providing all of the opportunities that you need to awaken and grow. All is well. Stop acting like it isn't. And of course, I can laugh about this, but it's not easy. I understand that. To live your life as though all is well. This is an easy thing to say. It's an easy thing to point toward. But as we all know, it's not such an easy thing to do. To just relax, accept, receive. and allow life to live through you without interference from this egoic personality. You cannot live a destiny which is not yours. The only life you're living is the destiny you have. Live it. Whether it's to sit in a cave on the top of a mountain or to be busy and active and living a public life somewhere. The only thing you can know for sure is it will change. So don't become too attached to whatever's here now, because it will not be here tomorrow. Only awareness remains. Know this from your own experience. The awareness you had as a 5-year-old is the awareness you have now. The awareness you had as a 15-year-old is the awareness you have now. The awareness you will have as an 85-year-old is the awareness which you have now. This is the constant. Be the seer, not the seen, and see what happens.